Good evening, everyone, and happy holidays. Welcome to Adventures with P. I'm P, and tonight I'm excited to share with you one amazing product. Some of you may never have heard of this product at all, and if you're a deer hunter, you might have just discarded it without even giving it a second thought. So stay tuned. I promise you it's going to be a good one. Throughout the years, the use of this product has escaped recent memory. And I don't know why people have forgot about it, because it provides some amazing benefits, not only as a source of a superfood or just health and skincare products, but also as a first aid treatment for a lot of minor skin irritations and ailments. And what I'm talking about is tallow. So what is tallow? Tallow is nothing more than rendered fat from certain animals, and that includes deer and, believe it or not, cows. You may have heard of a rendered fat that's a lot more popular, and that comes from a pig, and that fat is known as lard. And by and large, you can substitute tallow for lard or even vegetable shortening when it comes to cooking, and you would use it in the same way. So why should you use tallow? Well, there's a list of benefits, and I mean an entire list of benefits. Let's talk about the benefit of tallow as food. Well, for one, it's shelf stable. Like I said, it was a key ingredient in pemmican, and the voyageurs and fur traders took pemmican with them all throughout the trading routes. None of it was refrigerated when they were on their voyage. So it is shelf stable for a long time. It is also calorically dense, and I'm talking about 253 calories per ounce. So going back to the voyageurs, they needed a food that was high in calories, that was light in weight, that they can carry with them because they were burning so much calories on the fur trade. It also contains the highest levels of stearic acid found in any tallow producing animal. Now this is interesting here. There's a lot of science about stearic acid, and essentially what it does is it helps you to lower your bad cholesterol and raise your good cholesterol. And there's a lot of studies that support that, and they're still finding a lot of neat benefits behind it. It has a high smoke point, and we're talking about an excess of over 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which makes it a great product to use if you're trying to fry up any food. It is high in vitamins A, D, K, and vitamin B12, and it also contains a lot of fatty acids, primarily omega-3 fatty acids, and a component known as CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. And for those of you guys out there who are in the gym all the time, you may know CLA because it is one of the most studied compounds that is used in sports nutrition, and people use it to help maintain healthy levels of body fat. Essentially, kind of in layman's terms, dissolves some of that bad solid body fat that you carry on you. Let's talk about the benefits behind tallow for health and skincare. For one, it's full of triglycerides, which is used as it's effectively an emollient, which helps to push hydration back into your skin. Remember all those vitamins, A, D, K, and B12? Well, it's also full of vitamin E, which helps to replenish and renourish your skin as well. And people use that for things like sunburn. And in addition to that all, it does have that stearic acid component I was telling you about. And it's not just good for you if you take it on the inside of your body, it's also good for you on the outside. It helps with replenishment, it helps with that rehydration. And if you don't believe me, you can look it up, because stearic acid is actually a key component for cocoa butter and shea butter as well. Let's talk about some of the first aid benefits behind tallow as well. It's easily absorbed by the skin, and a lot of people will use tallow to treat things like rashes inflammation and scrapes and cuts. As a matter of fact, it's gentle, and a lot of people will use it to treat diaper rash on babies. There are also a lot of neat properties here. We're talking antimicrobial, antifungal, anti-inflammation, and science is still trying to prove some of the other health benefits here because there's still a lot of ongoing research behind the use of tallow for first aid. So in addition to first aid, food, and health and beauty, there's all kinds of stuff you can use tallow for. I mean, I'm talking about just even bushcraft stuff, fire starting, making candles, making lanterns, waterproofing leather, and even conditioning wood and steel. Hell, you can still use it as a lubricant for your black powder rifles and muskets. The applications for tallow are numerous. I promise, by the end of this video, you're going to think twice about discarding your tallow, and you're going to be making yourself a batch and reaping some of these benefits the next time you bag a deer. Cutting your tallow into small chunks helps it to render down faster. Quick tip here, make sure your tallow is cold before you start cutting it, because if it's not, it's just going to be a squishy, sticky mess. Some of our tallow, and it has been rendering down for I don't know, since like 6 o'clock this morning, so a good 7 hours. Once the fatty chunks have transformed from white to brown, you'll know that your tallow has been fully rendered and is ready to be filtered. In large batches, this process may take up to 12 hours. Here, we're using a mesh colander lined with cheesecloth to help us filter out all the unwanted sediment. You'll find that we do use parchment paper in this process, and it comes highly recommended. Lining our pan with parchment paper prevents the tallow from hardening and sticking to the glass pan, which is going to make it easier as we move on with the next step.
Hold that for a minute.
Look at that, that's actually clear.
Once cooled, you may notice that there's still a lot of unwanted sediment in your tallow. Don't worry, we'll be taking care of that in the next step.
There's still little bits here of deer meat, some connective tissue, all that other stuff. Most of it has got taken care of, but we just need to make sure that we're getting rid of the rest of it, all these little tiny pieces still in it. And I got an idea from Marie and Emmeline from Wisdom Preserved. Check out their channel, two wonderful ladies, and they gave me an idea here to wind up making sure we can actually filter this out. And it goes off of the process kind of much in the same way that water, when it freezes, any muddy water when it freezes kind of filters out by having the sediment kind of freeze at the bottom of the ice. And you can pick up a chunk of ice from a muddy pond, scrape off the bottom, and what you're left with is just pure water. And we're going to do kind of the same thing here, where we're taking our crock pot again, and we're just going to go ahead and add some salt into it. I don't know if the ratio is exactly important as opposed to just having salt. And that salt is going to kind of help draw out some of the impurities. And once this salt water gets dissolved, all I'm going to do is break up the tallow here. And we're going to melt it all down again, let it cool, so that way when it hardens, and all of the sediment layer is going to harden at the bottom, and we'll scrape that out, and what we're left with is just pure tallow. That channel, Wisdom Preserved, had a great idea of cooling things into a metal bowl where it tapers at the bottom, and what that allows the tallow to do is kind of filter. As it's filtering, just condense all of the impurities all at one little taper spot on the bottom side of the tallow, which means it's just a little less or a little more concentrated. When you have to scrape it out, it's going to be easier. So I'm going to give that a shot. We'll let you know how it goes. So all I'm going to do here is take some warm water, and I'm going to pour that into my metal bowl. What that's going to do is it's going to provide a little buffer. If there's any more impurities in the actual tallow, it's going to kind of draw it to the bottom as well. So all I'm going to do is fill this up, wait for it to cool, and then we'll cut it up and we'll have some tallow.
We found that a plastic butter knife is the best tool to use when you want to remove your tallow from the metal bowls.
Mostly right here.
We soon discovered, however, that when scraping the bottom side of your tallow, it's best to use a metal butter knife, as a plastic butter knife is way too aggressive and removes too much good tallow. This method of purifying the tallow worked surprisingly well. Notice how after scraping the underside of the tallow, I'm exposing a whiter, cleaner layer of the tallow. Don't be afraid to repeat this process as much times as you need to. Here's what the tallow looked like in our first iteration of the purifying process. Here's what the final rendering looked like.
So after about 4 iterations of melting down the tallow, pouring it into some water and letting it cool, flipping it over, scraping off whatever sediment was at the bottom, we can now actually see that there's no sediment left, which is telling me that this is going to be a really good batch of tallow here. And we are excited to tell you that after a week of straight rendering tallow, we are finally done. With the 4 deer that we were able to pull the tallow off, we've rendered about 6 liters worth of tallow. The very last step was to, after removing the tallow from the metal bowls and putting it on the plate, was just to dry it off. We dried it off for a couple of nights on one side, grabbed another plate, flipped it over, and let the other side dry. Now that it's all dried, we're ready to put it away for future use. Pretty interesting thing to note here was our first batch of tallow was rendered about 5, they were both rendered about 5 times, but the first batch came out a little bit softer than the second batch. We had an incident with a salt shaker, lid came off, got flooded with salt. It is a little bit softer than the second batch tallow, where this is a little bit harder. We're going to use the harder stuff for the soaps, and some of the softer stuff for salves and balms, and maybe even for cooking and making pemmican. Please stay tuned. We're going to have more follow-ups on how to actually make some of the soap, and that's going to be exciting because I'm going to have my kids make it. So stay tuned for that, and thank you for tuning in. So now that all the tallow is effectively rendered, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a tallow candle. I have a cotton wick here that all I did was I dipped the bottom end into the tallow and then placed it into the cup where it's now secured. I'm just going to go ahead and fill this up and we'll have a tallow candle. And now we have a tallow candle. All I'm going to do is secure the wick here so it doesn't flop and it stays right in the middle.